Hello dear friends, Dennis Chang here. So today I'm going to talk to you about a topic. It's for someone who's been leaving comments on my YouTube channel asking me to explain this thing that I call harmonic direction. This is a term I came up with myself because I was told that if you can come up with your own brand, like a own marketing term, it's good for business. So yeah, I call it harmonic direction. The term is my invention, but the concept itself is nothing new, and it's something that all the best jazz musicians use in their improvisation. And it's also how different improvisers come up with their own style. As I've said in the previous video, there are so many approaches to improvisation, and no one can lay claim on the one true way. If they do so, they're lying. And the beauty of coming up with your own style is, in my opinion, related to this harmonic direction concept. But first, please like, please subscribe, leave a comment. And if you're really interested in this topic, I do talk about it in depth in my harmony course on SoundSlice. Go to my SoundSlice page. You'll find the link in the description box. There's a course, I think it's called Practical Jazz Harmony. I did 4 volumes. Actually, I recorded like 12 volumes, but the guy who's supposed to edit the videos, I guess, had a little burnout, but he says he's gonna do them again eventually. The pandemic was hard, so I give him a break. But anyway, I talk about this in depth in the first few volumes, but I'm gonna explain it here too. I'll do it a little bit quicker, of course. So harmonic direction, basically, it is the idea that it is less about the individual chords played by the rhythm section or that you see on the sheet music, but about the idea of knowing where the harmony is going and where it's resolving. And this is open-ended because different people will interpret harmonies in different ways. So for example, just to give you an example, let's say you see a 2-5-1 in the key of G. 2-5-1 being A minor, usually 7, to D7 of some type, to G. That's a 2-5-1. Now, you may have heard teachers tell you that it's important to play the changes. And that seems to imply that when you have an A minor, you should play something that works over A minor, and when you have D7, you should play something that is related to D7 and G. So that is one system of improvisation. It exists. And people do use it to a certain extent, but when you start to analyze the soloing of a lot of your favorite players, usually in the older styles, but even in the modern styles, you will notice that it's not always the case. That's just a half truth. You'll sometimes notice that they are completely ignoring one chord or multiple in favor of another one. So an example of harmonic direction would be playing, let's say, A minor, and then C minor to G. That is something that Charlie Christian is very fond of. That phrase. He starts off with an A minor idea, then C minor. And how it works is a little bit of a complicated answer because it can be approached in a number of different ways. The easiest way, and I guess the earliest way, is through voice leading. There's a certain level of coherence involved. The idea being that you have common tones to work with. Between A minor and C minor, there are quite a lot of common tones, especially if you play A minor 7. Look, the difference between C minor and A minor 7 is really the fact that the E becomes E flat. That's it. And then you remove the A. But you can also add the A, then you end up having this. And G. And the logic behind this is that you have this chromatic movement, voice leading. You have this. that's the logic behind it. So this is one of the ways that you approach harmonic direction. So in fact, the D7 is completely ignored. But then if you went to music school or study with someone who teaches out of the music school curriculum, they'll tell you that, oh, but it's wrong. You're playing a G natural when it's supposed to be F sharp. G natural, according to Berkeley, the Berkeley Harmony curriculum, is called an avoid note. Or so I've been told by many people anyway. I didn't go to Berkeley. Avoid note, meaning you should avoid it. But here's the thing. If you learn jazz the way I did, which is through recordings, by investigating tons and tons of early recordings, you're going to notice that a lot of players are playing a lot of void notes. And the best thing you can do for yourself is to trust your ears. I played that phrase. Does it sound good or does it sound bad? If it sounds good, keep it. If it sounds bad, maybe change something or don't use it. I'm going to ask you to play these chords. So A minor to D7 to G. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. As I played that line, I played those chords. Did it sound bad to your ears? If it didn't, then it's good. If it did, okay, then fair enough. Don't use it. And that's the whole idea. Some people have certain preferences. And then when I was asking you to play the chords, I was asking you to specifically play these chords. 3-note sounds. So you leave the B string alone. Don't play the B string, because that's where all the wrong activity is happening. We're going to do the exact same thing. Rewind a little bit. Let me just play it again. Now this time play the chords like this. Let's try it again. See what happens. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Gotta do the vibrato like that. Gotta do the vibrato like that. Bop your head. Okay. Now that you played this, sorry. Did it sound bad when you played this and I played this? Ask yourself that question. So it does affect how I personally use this concept of harmonic direction. If I hear that the rhythm player, the comping section, the rhythm section is emphasizing certain chords too much, sometimes it's true that it might prevent me from using certain substitutions. I always rely on my ears anyway. But here's the thing. Let's say an accident happens. It's not necessarily such a big deal, especially if it's just in the passing moment. Like it's about, like, we're improvising, right? The accompanists are usually improvising certain chords, certain voicings, and you're improvising with your own ideas. Sometimes it doesn't always match, and you'll notice this if you start to transcribe the piano parts, the bass parts, and the soloing parts to a lot of recordings. I did quite a little bit of that with various recordings like Miles Davis Quintet, where the bass player will be playing one set of changes, the pianist his other set of changes, Red Garland, and Miles would be soloing over something else entirely. So, but they all end up at the same spot eventually. And as you're listening, often you don't hear these dissonances because it's all in motion. Now you might notice it if you're playing a little bit slower, insisting on all three players are insisting on certain notes at the same time. I did notice that once in a Charlie Christian recording where I think it was one or the other. It was the vibraphone player that played like something like that over a G7 chord, and I think it was Charlie Christian who played a G7 sharp 11 chord. So he had, so Charlie Christian was like, and the vibraphone or whatever was playing E. I don't remember which recording, but I did notice that, oh, a little bit of a clash. Oh well, big deal. One example I can think of, if you listen to, I think 1935, the 1935 recording of Django Reinhardt playing I Can't Give You But Love, it's the recording with a singer. Right off the bat, they have two rhythm guitar players. One rhythm guitar player on bar 3, 4. One rhythm guitar player is playing D7 for 2 bars, and the other one is doing. But I bet that none of you noticed it. Why is that? Because when you're listening to the recording, you're listening to everything. Usually, actually, you're listening to the solo player first. You're not really zoning in on the rhythm section. The reason why I noticed it is because one day, like I said, I'm very obsessed with harmony. And I'm also very obsessed with stylistic interpretation. That I spend a lot of time listening to parts that usually people don't really listen to. And by really focusing on just the rhythm guitar, I noticed that clash. So that's another topic in itself. When I accompany, I try to accompany in such a way that I support the player, but that I don't overwhelm the player, so that even if I play a chord voicing that might clash with what the soloist is playing, I usually tend to play quietly enough that the listener will not focus on what I played and more on what the soloist is playing. So if the soloist is playing notes that don't match what I play, and I played quietly enough and they play loud enough, usually listeners will not detect these wrong notes. It depends. But in the end, you always have to use your ears. That's just the best answer there is. Another thing about harmonic direction is, if you don't insist too much on the wrong note, usually it's harder to detect too. And sometimes harmonic direction can also mean not changing the chords, but using specific voicings that you wouldn't really expect. So going back to the example of A minor, D7 to G. So on a D7 chord, you have the note F sharp, right? And the G is supposed to be a wrong note. But actually some jazz musicians discovered completely ignoring the D7 chord, or just treating the D7 as D sus, even though the rhythm section itself is playing D7, but treating it in your soloing as a D sus, it has a certain flavor to it. So the rhythm section is playing A minor to D7, but you are only thinking A minor 7. Let's do a test. I'm just going to ask you to play a D7 chord, like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Did that sound bad to you? If it did, don't use it. But if it sounds cool, then use it. This is a sound that a lot of jazz players use. Wes Montgomery was very, very fond of this sound. So in this case, it comes from the fact that, let's say you have an A minor to D7 chord. Notice how if you play A minor 6 and you play D9, the only note that's changing is that you're adding the note D between A minor 6 and D7. But then the reason why we play A minor 7 instead of A minor 6 is so that we have this movement. But then some soloists realized, hey, okay, I let the rhythm section do this, but what if I just stayed on A minor itself? They realize it has a certain flavor. Think of it as a flavor above all else. Instead of playing the notes that are obvious, play the notes that are in common but that are a little bit less obvious. And different players will come up with different things based on this concept. They'll realize, okay, over A minor 7, they can play a C major chord because it has A minor 7 and C major triad is exactly the same thing. It's just that you're not adding the note A to the A minor. So C minor, C6 is actually A minor 7. So then players discovered, okay, over A minor, why don't I just play a C chord? But then to make it a little bit spicier, they realized, hey, why don't I make it a C major 7? And this creates this A minor 9 chord. So and since then it starts to become like an endless game, but they realize, hey, that sounds cool over A minor. But since I can play A minor over D7, why don't I play C major 7 over D7? And on it goes. So different musicians start to discover these little things. And that's how with one shape you can do a lot of different things. One other thing that Wes Montgomery loved to do, let's say you have a D minor chord. He liked to play an A minor sound over it. Play that over D minor. Da, 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 da. Pretty cool, huh? But then Wes discovered, hey, okay, A minor is also the same as C major 7. So over D minor, creates a sound. So Wes was fond of certain sounds like that, and lots of different things like that. So the possibilities for harmonic direction can be endless. In earlier styles of jazz, I would say it's a little bit more logical, more obvious, and conservative. But as jazz evolved over the years, people start to discover more things that start to stretch the boundaries of what is obvious. And so one clear example of that is the Coltrane changes, when people start to superimpose Coltrane changes over standard chord progressions. If you don't know about Coltrane changes, it doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. You can look it up, but it's irrelevant to this video. All this to say that the concept of harmonic direction can start simple, but then it can also be taken to extremes. Harmonic direction also applies to playing rhythm. Let's take a song like I Can't Give You Anything But Love in the key of G. If you look at early recordings of the song, it's actually just 2 chords in the beginning. I can't give you anything but love, baby. G and D7. But shortly after, some musicians start to realize it's a little bit boring to just do that. It would be nice to have a little bit movement while retaining the character of the song. So at its core, it's just 2 chords, the 1 and the 5, G and D7. But then other musicians start to find new pathways to get from G to D7 to have a little bit more movement. I can't do anything but love. You have all these extra passing chords that the rhythm section starts to improvise, but the soloist is ignoring all those passing chords. They're just staying on G. Of course, the soloist can outline those chords as well, however they want, but they can also choose not to. And that's how, like I said, when you start to have this way of interpreting harmony, different players will come up with different solutions. And if you look at modern recordings of I Can't Give Anything But Love, like 50 years, 60 years down the road, you start to hear new harmonizations. I can't give you anything but love. That would be the Marsalis fathers. What's his name? I forgot his name. Marsalis, the piano player who passed away not too long ago. But you have so many variations. You have this. You have this. you have this. Lots of different things you can do. On and on it goes. And this is something you have to be aware of when you start to transcribe or listen to your favorite recordings, that a lot of this is happening despite what certain music school curriculums are teaching you. And when you start to learn a lot of songs, hopefully by ear, and investigate a lot of solos, hopefully by ear as well, you'll start to be able to determine on your own by instinct what can be ignored, what should not be ignored. A lot of it is open to interpretation. So basically, this whole idea about playing the changes is often not very well explained by a lot of teachers. It gives the impression that you have to play every single chord that's written on the sheet music, when in fact it's not true at all. Of course, you have the option of doing that, but you also have the option of choosing which ones are more important. For example, Autumn Leaves, traditionally on most sheet music, it would say C minor, F7, B flat, major 7, E flat major 7, A minor 7 flat 5, D7, G minor. But in that chord progression, the only important thing is F7 to B flat and D7 to G minor. Everything else is just extra little colors that can potentially be ignored. Here's another example of harmonic direction. There's a song called Have You Met Miss Jones? Have You Met Tom Jones? G minor, C7. They have this note, G minor 7. But then some people realized, hey, okay, there's this B flat. What if instead of doing this, I did this? So now there are some rhythm players who play the song like that. Instead of doing 2 bars of one bar of G minor, 1 bar of C, they do half measure of G minor, this chromatic. Or even if the rhythm player is not doing it, the soloist might do. Outline it. That's a really common, quote unquote, modern idea, modern approach to using this harmonic direction concept. And then they'll apply it to other songs as well. For example, but look. Da, 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 dee. Da, 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 dee. I've seen people do that in their soloing. That's again an example of pushing the boundaries. You have all these chromatic chords, but eventually it resolves to G minor. The chromatic chords don't always have anything to do with the chords behind, but it starts off with certain. The premise here is that the melody has this note E flat, which can be harmonized potentially with D flat minor. And the melody here has the note D, which can be potentially harmonized with B minor 7 instead of B flat major. So someone might solo like this. It's going to sound like crap, but just to show you the idea. And Wes's favorite substitution from 4 on 6. Yeah, the topic of harmony is vast. So that's the idea behind harmonic direction. I hope that was kind of clear. If not, I talk about it really in detail in my harmony course. Check it out.